Happy Halloween.
Wait, was it 25 seconds already?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh,
35
you meant on
seconds.
the live. Hello and welcome to the Just Weebs podcast. I'm your host, Onimaru, and I'm here with Shocking. And as you can see, this pod isn't live. We decided to pre-record this one because this is our Halloween special. For this one, we actually decided to watch one particular anime that had been on our plan to watch list for like years. We just heard about it. We never got around to it. It was like this anime from 2010 called Shiki. So we both watched that at the same time, like within a week. And we're excited to talk about that, but we're also just going to talk about like some other horror related things, such as like why there's so little anime that is horror, and can anime in general be scary?
Yeah, so it's like a very interesting topic because like the idea of like horror and anime has always been like just a very weird topic in general, because I think everyone thinks that anime has the makings of something that could be scary, but for some reason it just doesn't really capitalize on it that much. Or like there's definitely potential there, but it just rarely hits. So I've seen a lot of debates on horror anime just in general, and like what actually makes someone feel scared or like on edge. So I think what ends up happening is like pure horror anime are very few and far between, but what ends up happening is that like thriller anime kind of step into that role and end up being scarier than any kind of intended horror. So I think you'll find there's a lot of anime with like creepy or scary moments, but they're rarely the main focus.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like there's a lot of, as you said, a lot of psychological thrillers, but not really scary, because like I think to produce scary or horrifying anime, they have to kind of like capture like a specific atmosphere, like an eeriness that's kind of, I think, difficult to do with animation, as I've seen with many examples where they try to be like, they might capture the eeriness or the atmosphere, but they're not actually like scary. They don't actually scare you. And I don't know if it's because maybe because of the animation style, it's harder to project. Like it's easier to project other feelings, but maybe not fear. Or, maybe that is hard to kind of find yourself immersed in. By the way, to the audio listeners, I did not mention that Shocking and I are both in Halloween costumes. She is wearing a Snorlax onesie, and I am wearing a wonderful outfit that my mother lovingly crafted for me because she knows I love superheroes. It is the first outfit for Deku that he wears in My Hero Academia.
That his mom made for him.
That his mom made for him. Yes. I stand by it. But yeah, so back to what we were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's always kind of interesting. I think we've all seen examples of kind of thriller series, but it is interesting because I was thinking to like other mediums, and like for context for everyone, I get scared at like anything. So I'm very easy to scare. It doesn't take much. When it comes to like live action, video games, like doesn't take much to get me to be spooked. So the bar is in hell for me to get scared. Like I remember like when I was a kid, like I would not watch horror movies. Like I don't watch scary movies. I don't watch Halloween films. Like don't really dabble in that too much. Maybe because I lived across from like a cemetery, so I'm like, if anything goes bump in the night, it gets me first. I just know I'm out first. I'm not taking a chance. But so I haven't really seen too many scary things, but it is interesting how out of like the scary stuff we've seen in anime, I still don't actually get scared with them. So if there's anyone who would get scared from horror anime, it would be me. And that still doesn't happen. So had to do the full disclaimer that I'm not like a horror snob. It does not take much.
Yeah, I'm not a horror snob either. I've like horror is my least favorite genre. Similar to you, didn't watch it. I always stayed away from it purposely growing up. I just didn't want to get scared. I've avoided The Exorcist like the plague. Still do not want to watch it. I've heard it's like the scariest movie ever, so I'm good. But I typically don't look for horror movies. I typically don't look for that type of thrill. But with anime, again, because it's not as fear-inducing, it's not as scary, I'm more willing to just check it out because I know I'm not going to get scared. So
yeah, like I've had a few scenes where I've been like, okay, this really stuck in my mind. But I'm not sure if we wanted to get into like our actual Halloween anime homework yet. But I think both of us coming into this, I think we both agreed that the scariest anime we had watched up until this point was Perfect Blue, which is not a horror anime, 100% psychological thriller, but the way it's done is so immersive and so engrossing and so just like keeps you on the edge of your seat so much, like always keeps you guessing, that when you get to the reveals, you're also kind of like, okay, when I actually sit back and think of this, it's not even just kind of like the jump scare of what's transpiring. It's also like the implications of everything that's happened is actually just as scary as like the way it's presented, you know?
Yeah.
Because for me, a lot of it for me is like, you take a step back, you finish Perfect Blue, and you're like, okay, that was a trip. But then you think about Perfect Blue and you're like, okay, that was infinitely scarier as a concept because of the implications for reality that I think we can kind of see transpiring, especially online, you know?
Yeah, it wasn't really like fuel for like jump scares. Like there were a few points where it was like, okay, there was like a jump scare or two that, you know, is rare in an anime, like something that'll creep you out so much. It's like, you know, but it could be the style also. It leans more towards a realistic sort of style.
Yeah.
But because of like not knowing what's going on and the implications, yeah, there's a few jump scare moments, but overall it's not scary, like horrifying. But by the end of it, as you said, you're just thinking about it and then you're like, wait, this was like 1998. And all of this stuff applies so much more.
Yeah.
Even now in 2021, it's like so ahead of its time. So
Satoshi Kon, the GOAT.
Yeah. And especially if you spend a lot of time in like the online space, social media, or you're a content creator or whatever, you feel that even more. Even if you have any level of a following, you're just like, okay, you know, like would I want to get like, you know, this big or this successful or even just this known, you know, that people would know my face, what I look like, stuff like that. Cause you know, it could lead like to that. And
the idea of also like having expectations and feelings about like your public persona and trying to like dictate that part of your life as well as like your own personal life, I think is kind of wild. Like just that, you know, hopefully everyone has seen Perfect Blue who's listening, but I guess quick background if you haven't, it's essentially about this idol who is no longer in her idol pop group and wants to pursue a serious acting career, which means starting to take on more mature roles. So there's this huge disconnect with, you know, her idol fans who, you know, really glorify and idolize her as like a pure virgin, like, you know, pure cutesy kind of teeny bopper image, you know, thanks to like Disney Channel, going to like, okay, she's working on like Law and Order SVU type shows, you know, where they deal with really serious things like assault, murder, you know, so that huge contrast, you know, bridges a divide in her fandom, which then translates to real life when she also is kind of unable to tell the difference between her as a individual and her as like an actor or performer, which is a very interesting divide, which you can kind of see happening a lot with like, as you said, content creators and public figures, where it's like, where do you draw the line between their public facing persona and their private persona?
Yeah, I remember watching it and it was such like a jarring contrast to go from her like, you know, pure and like, you know, being this idol, like kind of like wholesome on stage, you know, happy, kind of doing her best, to then suddenly being thrust into this world of like a more heavy material that obviously doesn't suit her. And it's like kind of really like psychologically like messing with her and kind of making her more jaded, more cynical. And you kind of just see like the descent as well. And it's just like, and then her kind of dealing with like online criticisms and stuff like that. And like that separation of who she is, what people see, and kind of like knowing yourself, which I feel like the director himself has like explored in some of his other works, but it's really prevalent in Perfect Blue.
Yeah. It just kind of, I think it's definitely a masterpiece, like just ahead of its time. It really conveys everything so perfectly. And it's just such a unique experience. I mean, if anyone will take anything away from this podcast, it's like watch Perfect Blue, especially for, it might be the perfect Halloween film for you. You never know. But it's just it's a wonderful film that's definitely the scariest, even without 100% intending to be the scariest. But
Yeah,
I think
because it doesn't have those, again, the horror aesthetic or the spooky elements. It's just sort of like you can see it happening, and that's
yeah,
like that messes with you, you know, on a mental
yeah.
level. But like maybe like that's the closest to something I've watched that is more on like, okay, this is an anime, but it's still kind of like scary.
Yeah.
In terms of other stuff, you know, the only other one I can think of that everyone kind of knows is Higurashi. And, you know, we've mentioned it before on a previous podcast. I haven't played the visual novel, so I can't speak to the visual novel, but I can speak to the original anime.
Yeah.
And I felt like that, and I know, Shaw, you haven't watched it, but you've
Lay it
heard
on me,
about
though.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
like, go ahead, sorry.
No, you go, because lay it on me, because I've heard my entire experience with Higurashi has been hearing things, so I have like a mismatch of hearing things about Higurashi. Like,
yeah, like I feel like the original anime is able to kind of nail sort of like that atmosphere of kind of creepiness, like leaving a bit up to the imagination, sort of like with the character designs, with the music. It really is able to at least like unsettle you to a certain extent. Like it might not outright like horrify you, but has like a lot of gore moments, which I think I heard they might have amped that up for the anime. I'm not quite sure, but
that's what I heard. But
yeah. So like those scenes aren't scary. They're just like really fucked up, and you're like, oh shit, I can't believe that's happening. But it definitely at least nails the vibe, I think. Yeah.
So would you say that's like more or less scary than Perfect Blue, or just kind of like different?
I think it's different because like I feel like it does have like creepy moments where you're like, oh, okay, you know, like, but I feel like Perfect Blue is able to just stay with you. Yeah. Like after you're done with Higurashi, you're like, okay, either that was a good story or like, oh wow, that was like, you know, insane or creepy.
Yeah.
But with Perfect Blue, it's like you could just, I guess the whole relevance factor that we talked about is able to just sort of like stay with you, you know, like, oh, you could see that happening. Yeah. But in terms of Higurashi at least has the vibe that fits that whole spooky feeling, and maybe like characters having like, you know, suddenly they'll look, you know, because most of the time it's the thing with Higurashi, it transitions mostly from like a slice of life and tons of slice of life moments to then these sudden like horror, like contrasting like horror moments where you see like this innocent character who you imagine could never do any harm, and suddenly like the frame like shifts. And like they have like a shadow like over their face, and they have like this crazy expression. It's like, oh my God. And it's like they nail that in the original anime. Whereas in the sequel, which I know if you haven't watched the original, you haven't watched the sequel, maybe you've heard, but like
I've heard things.
It's like the animation, or I should say more accurately, the character designs look so clean and polished, and they look really nice when it first came out. But for some reason, I don't know if it's because they look so clean and like kind of more up to date with what anime looks like now, that they can't nail the scary like expressions that the first anime could. Like whenever they try to do the scary expressions, it just feels either really over exaggerated or it looks really goofy that you can't take it seriously. Now, I was able to look past it. I was able to kind of still watch the anime for what was going on, but a lot of people did complain about it early on within the first 4 episodes of the first season, Higurashi Go.
Yeah, that's so interesting because I remember hearing that the original Higurashi, which was done by Dean, like it looked kind of like the character designs looked kind of rough, but people kind of said that like that made it better because it almost fit everything a bit better. Like it kind of fit the tone more.
Yeah, like I think that's what I was kind of getting at. Like I feel like that roughness like is able to kind of make things a little bit more ambiguous or vague looking, that like, I don't know, it blends in a little more. And with horror, because horror is always a little bit like more on the surreal side, because that's the thing with Perfect Blue. It's kind of like not knowing fully what's going on and letting your imagination run wild. So I think because it had that sort of art style, it could lend itself better to nailing that, you know. And this is not coming from a horror expert. This is just, you know.
Yeah, just our impression. But yeah, I know what you mean, because I know exactly what type of facial expression you're talking about, because naturally when I read Yumi Neko, they had one of those where it like shifts from like the cute girl and then it's like just gets more and more like terrifying as like the scene goes on. And when I first read that, I was like shitting my pants. I was like, I hate looking at this. This terrified me. I'm like yo, I gotta go. Like this, we gotta leave. I was like posting, I was like, destroy this kid, like get rid of it.
Yeah.
But so I was like, end it. I don't want to send it to you in case, because you gotta experience it for your own.
But is it scary? Is it horror? Or
Well,
like Umineko, or is it just sort of like, kind of has moments that kind of call back to the his first series? Is that what more? But it is like an homage.
So most of it is just a mystery. It's kind of like what you were saying with Higurashi, where it's like, because, well, they don't show anything. I should say that for full clarification, since the visual novel and like Yumineko, it doesn't really show anything. It just kind of describes stuff. But it does have some really gory moments, which sound reminiscent of Higurashi, as you're telling me, like really gory moments. But there's only one part that really feels like a horror, and that's like the first episode, so to speak. So like the first arc. And that's because there's so much mysteriousness going on behind the scenes. And that's where that face showed up. So that's probably the closest it gets to horror. But I wasn't really scared by anything except her facial reaction. I was just like, yo,
yeah,
get away from me. Like,
it's kind of hard to find the words, like, because there are varying degrees. But I think like Higurashi mostly stays within that creepy realm, where it's like can induce fear, but it's not actually like really scary. And it sounds like Umineko is similar sort of vibe.
Yeah, I would say from what I have heard, since I haven't seen Higurashi or read it, and you haven't seen Yumineko, it sounds like Higurashi is scarier for everyone listening. That seems to be the vibe. But
I think the one thing I've picked up on from the horror sort of anime that I experienced and other, I guess, mediums too, is a lot of it has to do with the soundtrack or the sound effects.
Yeah.
Like I think that is a big part of producing the vibe, the atmosphere of like something really creeping you out. And I noticed that a lot when I was watching Shiki. Like,
yeah, there's like, so Shiki, should we just go into the Shiki talk?
I think we should. We could always jump back to say a few other things, but because Shiki was definitely an experience.
Shiki was interesting. We've been kind of clickbaiting each other with our thoughts on it, and we haven't really said anything. We just keep being like, Shiki was a thing. Like, Shiki happened. And so we don't really know how each other feels about it.
We were just like, yo, F14. Yo, 25, 21.5, 21.5. Or sorry, 20.5, whatever.
Both of them, So, that was kind of funny because we've just been like, but so we watched Shiki for the first time. It was our anime homework. I don't know about you, but I've had it on my plan to watch list for literally 4 years. Like, genuinely, it's been sitting there waiting for me to watch it for so long.
So I didn't actually have it on my plan to watch list at all. I kind of lied a little bit about that earlier, but
close enough. And
like I had heard about it back in like 2012 or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I was in college and like I think a friend had like a poster of it in a dorm room, and I like saw it there, and I was like, oh, is this like? It's like, oh yeah, it's scary or something like that. And so I kind of knew it in the back of my mind, and then when I was looking up like horror and like actual scary anime that exists recently, it was on one of the lists, and I'm like, oh, you know what? I heard about this. Maybe I should give it a shot. So yeah. This
is the one consistent one I've always heard as like the good horror anime. Like every time anyone comes up with a list, there's always some kind of like debate amongst others. In some cases, it's like Shiki is the one somehow. Like I've always heard it with Shiki. So I've heard about it for so long. I've been waiting to check it out, and I had like pretty much no expectations. I already knew that it was about vampires.
You know what? I didn't know that.
You didn't know? Okay.
I think I knew. Like I think I heard something about it a long time ago, but when I went in, I completely forgot that fact. And maybe when it finally like really like mystery started unraveling a little bit as to that they're vampires, I'm like, oh wait, I remember something about this, and then that started coming back to me.
So when did you realize it was about vampires? Like what episode?
I mean, I was like pretty far in. It was like right before they outright like said it. I think it's like right before what's his face, the little piece of shit. That
could be like literally half the cast. Like literally half the cast.
No, but he's like the biggest one.
He is. Yeah.
Masao gets jumped by the
that annoying dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I think it's like right before that. I think around that point, I'm like, okay. Yeah. I think once they started like seeing the bite marks, I'm like, oh, these are vampires.
These are vampires, not zombies, vampires.
Yeah. And it's that was, I don't know, like, I think it was good that I didn't know. I didn't come in with that expectation because I gotta say, like, the way they did it, like, impresses me so much because I've never seen vampires, and I've seen a lot of vampire shit in my life. I'm sure all of us have. There was a big vampire werewolf phase. We've just been oversaturated, like, with that in Western media.
And this came out around that time. That's, like, interesting of note. Like, this came out in 2010. That was, like, the Twilight time. So, it's cool that this came out in contrast to, like, the sparkly, goofy vampires that were that were dominating, like, pop culture.
I'm actually so glad I watched it now, though, because back then I would have just been like, I don't need another fucking show like about this shit. More. Like, imagine watching like 6 episodes and you're like, oh, I wonder what it could be. Oh, it's fucking vampires.
Damn it.
Fucking vampires.
Yeah.
But no, but I was like, so it was kind of like not having seen anything vampire related in a while, and then just
it's refreshing.
That's the word, refreshing. And I was like, I've never seen vampires being done like this, where I'm like, like I wasn't afraid. But I could see how, like, they were scary. Like, you were scared for the characters. Like, you didn't know, like, when they were going to pop out. Like, they just had both this mystery and just, like, vague, like, terrifying nature to them. I don't know. Like, it's just, Yeah,
it was kind of cool because I knew they were vampires because that's how, I mean, I just kind of knew it was about vampires. That's essentially all I knew. And I knew based on, like, the vague conversations around it that I'd hear is that it would be, like, oh, vampires, but, like, humans are bad too. Like, we've all seen that kind of stuff. Like, oh, but humans are evil. Like, we all know about that. Yeah. So I knew it was going to be vampires, but something that I really appreciated is, I think in my experience too, of, like, we've all lived through vampire phases, is that the way they go through and establish the Shiki vampires is it's a lot more old school and classic. So one of the old school vampire tropes is they're not able to go into houses they're not invited into. So I kind of knew that they were going to do that. So I was, like, listening up for that. And every time they had, these town folk being, like, nice to new people, being like, oh yeah, you should come by sometime. They're like, we will definitely visit you soon. And I'm like, I know that means, like, you're fucked, but, like, they don't know. And I think that comes to, like, a really cool head at the end of episode 3 when you start realizing that they're vampires. And, like, one of the new guys is like, I will definitely come visit you. And he has this really creepy face. And that was something, like, we talked about where I'm not really, like, shitting myself, but I'm like, yo, that, like, stuck with me.
Yeah. Like, I'll get to that scene in a second, but I do want to say that I just remember that is part of how I was starting to piece it together. I started to realize the whole being invited in thing. And I was just like, cause, like, maybe, like, an episode later, I'm like, wait, maybe they're vampires. Cause, like, and I'm not recalling exact episodes right now, but like, they were invited in, like, but then how was Megumi able to get in and bite his friend Toru and kill him? Like, oh, because the other guy was invited and he let her in. So I was already, like, putting the pieces together, like, oh, these are probably vampire. And then they say, like, okiagari, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're not. And I was like, oh, no, they are. Just another word for it. They're corpse demons. But back to Takumi, who we're talking about, like, okay. This guy, so if you haven't seen Shiki, one of the most things that stands out most about this show are the character designs. Like, they have this wacky, like, hairstyles that's reminiscent of, like, Yu-Gi-Oh, you know?
Okay, his hair looks like this costume.
Yes.
It literally looks like this. It's like, this is a costume, and that's
ears him. Of hair, like, ears made out of his hair protruding out of his head.
It looks like he has cat ears on, but that's literally just his hair.
I just took it as, like, an overt symbolism for just demon horns, but then once you said cat ears, I'm like, oh, it's the cat boy.
Can't unsee it.
And
it's worse.
And, like, and when you see him, he kind of looks like kind of spineless, sort of just kind of like a harmless kind of guy that's just sort of, I don't know, to me, he looks like one of those, like, henchmen that just fucks up a lot. Yeah. And then... So with the look and kind of his demeanor, he's not someone, like, you could really take seriously. And then the episode you're talking about, I think it was episode 3, right? Like, at the end of episode 3, it just suddenly shifts, like the art style, or sorry, not the art. Yeah, the art style.
Yeah, the art style.
And the shading on his face, and he just gets so serious. And it's like, from that moment on, it's like, it's crazy how something so goofy looking doesn't detract from being able to take it so seriously. Like,
I think you're on point, and it's very interesting to see how, even when we know what's going on, it's like that increasing dread of seeing just, like, essentially most of the town get, like, wiped out, because I don't know about you, but I was like, I think they did like a good job of kind of showing like people gradually noticing that something was up, because I've seen some complaints for the series of like, well, how come they like didn't know? And it's like, okay, try and convince a small town that they're getting invaded by vampires and see how well that goes. Especially when you're a doctor and you're not as inclined to believe in the supernatural because you've been studying science all your life. Yeah. So I think they did a good job. And it's almost like the horror element in that is like watching this town gradually get decimated, and you're kind of like, damn, like they're all gonna get done? Are they just gonna get wiped out? Like,
and they're just so apathetic about it, and it's just kind of like both frustrating, sad. It's like, what the fuck? Is this just a slow burn until they all just die? And it does feel like that for most of it. And it's very easy. It's very easy to kind of just get like, just feel done with them, with the show. Just like, why aren't they doing anything? But if you really think about it, it's a very realistic take. You know, it's like if you were to actually deal with the town, it's not like they're just gonna be like, oh, you know, there's vampires. Let's go fucking like stake them. Let's go.
Yeah, obviously vampires. And I've seen a lot of takes that it's kind of a metaphor for like change in a small town, like small towns dying out, like new trends happening and just gradually overtaking them without anyone trying to kind of like make any effort to change it.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think there are some like general takes on it that I like half agree, half disagree with because of some of the actual elements of the series that make it tough to be like a one-to-one allegory or metaphor. Yeah. But there is that element of like, this is an old town kind of stuck in its ways. They're not gonna change anything, whether it's for new people coming in or getting wiped out by vampires. Like, they're just kind of stuck. And they're not going to be convinced that easily until you literally drag a vampire out in front of them and prove to them that it's a vampire.
Yeah, because that forces them to act. Because I was like really thinking about this. I'm like, why weren't they doing anything? And it's just like, it's more of because it wasn't convenient. Because like pretty much what it is, it's not like, so, because I was like, why would they act then once they see the vampire when they weren't acting before? And it's because there's a lot of effort involved to go out and find the truth when you've got nothing to base it on, nothing to go on except someone's word, and it's like, it's a fantasy. But then when you see it in front of you, then it's easy to just point your finger and be like, okay, we can blame it on this. And then that's enough ammo to just, the work's been done, now you can just project and take all your anger out on it, which leads to a lot of brutality.
Yeah, the town went from Snorlax to Lord of the Flies in like 5 seconds. She got crazy.
That's a good analogy. Yeah,
thank you.
It was sleepy ass town, and then suddenly it just got
Sleepy Hollow, Lord of the Flies.
Yeah,
yeah. It was cool to see because it was equal parts frustrating, as you said, to be like, I guess they're just gonna die. Like, I guess they're all just gonna get wiped out. But it really does make me root for the junior Dr. Ozaki. I don't know about you, but he was like the only dude I had like any like strong feelings for in a positive way. Him and maybe like the teenage MC, but he was like the MVP.
We're talking about the main doctor, right? He was a junior doctor?
That's what they call him, like junior doctor.
I thought they called the monk the junior monk, and I thought he was just the doctor.
He might be. I might be mixing it
up. I might have missed that because I know he was a son of a prestigious
I think that's doctor. Why they call him. I think that's why they called him junior doctor. But
either way, I agree with you because like by the end of it, and I don't want to jump, like we can talk about it more in depth a little later, but by the end of it, I was just feeling sort of empty. Like I wasn't really attached to anyone. Yeah. Like I didn't really care. I didn't really give a shit about anyone, but I think that was the point. And if I had to really nail it down to like who are my favorite characters, definitely the doctor, definitely the edgelord guy.
Edgelord MC, who's still kind of like MC. A shithead. Yeah. But like we respect him by the end.
No, yeah. Like I didn't give two shits about him for like most of it. And then he like, kind of, and then, but by the end, I'm just like, man, he went out like a badass. Like I respect him.
Yeah. So, you gotta respect it at that point. Like he was kind of insufferable for a lot of it because he was kind of a tool, but like I do respect the actions and dedication. So
yeah, like by the end, when he's in that, spoiler, I guess, well, definite spoiler, when he's in that pit with Takumi and he just takes out the TNT and
he's like, we out.
That's it. And his only reason was just like, I don't like you guys. That's it. Yeah. Bye.
Yeah. I hate y'all. Bye. I kind of respect it. It's definitely a Chad move. I don't know if it's like the most compelling, but I can get it and I respect it. Since we're just in Endgame Shiki talk, so like if you don't want to hear us spoil Shiki because you actually feel compelled to watch it based on what we said before, maybe could we do like a timestamp
Yeah, like I
We'll
didn't
do a
mean
timestamp
to
in the
jump the
description.
gun already to the ending. Sorry
No,
about
but
that.
it's like a natural progression of things.
Like, as I do respect that move from him. Like, he wasn't a compelling character, but like the way he went out, boss.
Yeah. Chad moves.
Like, it was for the community, you know. So
he
you gotta
did it
respect
for the squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, so naturally, as you can probably get by my Lord of the Flies reference, you know, this obviously getting invaded by vampires brought out the animalistic nature for humans to survive, as shown by the Dr. Ozaki experimenting on his wife, who rose up as a Shiki, in order to find out their strengths and weaknesses, which is probably one of 2 times I ever felt bad for the Shiki. Only twice. So, like, she didn't do anything wrong. She has no idea what's going on. And he's just, like, doesn't give a shit. And he's just, like, going crazy to find out what's wrong. And he certainly does figure out how to kill them. But I feel bad at that point. That was just, like... Oof.
That episode went hard. You know, that was just crazy. Like, it was hard to watch. It was definitely hard to watch, and I didn't think it would be. And like, it went into gruesome detail to like how he's experimenting on her.
Because he's recording it and saying what he's doing.
Yeah, and I'm imagining like people watching this, and he's just like giving the step by step of just him like like killing his wife all over again, or he kind of trying every like killing method in the book to see what works on his wife, and yeah.
At this point, she doesn't know that Shiki exists. She doesn't know, like, how she's risen up. She knows him because she remembers, like, him. So she doesn't know anything, and she hasn't killed anyone. She can't even speak. She hasn't killed anyone. She doesn't know anything. So I do feel very bad because, like, you know, didn't deserve that. That was unwarranted, but... You can understand where he's coming from because no one out there is trying to do anything to try and save them or make any effort. And he's the one dealing with the day-to-day death count of everything. He's gotten like negative sleep for 3 months. So he's not going to be in his right mind. He's going to go crazy. But as he said to the punk-ass bitch junior priest, who we will get into, he's like, I made a decision. And I was like, you know what? I respect that. Shiki Sanwoo. We respect that. As you put him, he sung-wooed the situation.
Yeah. No. You know, I felt a little bad for his wife. You know,
minor.
Like, I don't know. Like, I was just like astounded by how much the doctor was really just unraveling, you know, just episode by episode. Like, you saw, like, just chipping away at his sanity because he was so determined to like save all of the villagers. He was failing constantly, and he was just that gone.
And to be fair, he tried to save his wife. It's not like he hated his wife. He did everything he could to save his wife, just like everyone else.
But you could tell, like, once she died, something snapped in him, like, just broke. Like, he's just like, I don't give a shit. That's it. Yeah. What do we got to do? Like, what do we got to do?
Exactly. And you kind of got to respect it because no one else is doing anything. I don't know how you feel about the priest, but I have thoughts about him because he was just, like, so ridiculously like uncompelling and bad. Like, you know what's funny about that? Okay, so you were like, I think like 2, maybe 4 episodes, maybe 5. I don't know how many episodes you were ahead of me at the time, but you already kind of like, I only talked to you about episode 14, but then you like jumped ahead and said something about the priest. Like, you know, it's like he doesn't want to do anything because he's just simping after the Shiki girl. And then I'm just like, oh, I don't think that's happened yet. Is he okay? Whatever. And so, you know, I already felt like ambiguous, like whatever about the priest. Like I didn't get his deal. But then once I got to that part, I'm like, fuck, come on, man. Like, this guy. You should say that. It's funny you should say that because I was referring to him and the couple, like, in the beginning episodes before he knew she was a Shiki when they were meeting in the, like, temple church thing with the stained glass windows and they were talking about his book. That's what I was referring to. Little did I know that I was spoiling the end where he also does do that because she read his book and understands him.
Jesus fucking Christ. Like,
who knew?
I don't like his arc, man. I don't think it was, I think it was trying to do something, but I don't think it was executed well.
I think what they were trying to convey, which I don't think they succeeded at, but this is what I think they were trying to do, was trying to illustrate that, like, his suicide attempt was him trying to break free from the village customs and the unhappiness he felt between them. And so him like joining the Shiki girl because she understood him when he never felt understood was his way of kind of like making his own choices in life, which he was never able to, as evident by him kind of like following his dad into being a priest. But the point is, like, they have this very weird Cain and Abel allegory for him that they also turn into like his story, which they gave another twist, which is kind of like him being essentially saying he.
Sorry, it was just super confusing. Was it just me? It was super confusing.
No, it was really confusing.
Like adding in that allegory, being like, by the way, don't have a little brother. Also, this is my answer. Psych, that's not my answer. This is my answer. Yeah. Psych again. Now I found my answer. I was just like, I don't care, dude. I don't care. Do whatever you want. Go ahead. Sorry.
It's just not like sympathetic because like he's one of the people who knows that these vampires are decimating the village, and he just doesn't give a shit about it.
He's like, one of the people that was investigating it first, like really finding out like this might not be an epidemic, and he actually had the answers. And once like the doctor kind of dismissed him, he was like, all right, I don't give a shit, and then he was done. He was like, all right, back.
But he came back with the doctor and saw it like attacks happen firsthand. So like I don't know how he's like. I guess the whole point is, like, he never really gave a shit about the village. He was only kind of, like, carrying out that role. But, like, I don't understand how he could be that apathetic towards, like, everyone getting decimated and then turn around and be like, well, the Shiki are people, too. I think that's my main disconnect, which, to be, like, overall, I really enjoyed the series. But I think they tried to present the Shiki as, like, different but equal. But I don't think they really conveyed that well because no matter what, at the end of the day, the Shiki rely on killing people.
Yeah, so it's not sustainable.
I'm never going to feel bad.
They're not sustainable. They reproduce, they create too many Shiki too fast that they wouldn't have a means to kind of sustain themselves long term.
And they indoctrinate people into killing other people. There's no like, join us of your own free will. There's no sense of like, try and consume blood as you would. Like, there's no sense of freedom amongst their own subset of society. Like, they're literally, like, teaching them and forcing them to kill other people around them. And then when you don't, they threaten to kill your family. So it's more like they're getting indoctrinated into a gang rather than joining this separate society.
Yeah. And their only choice is to die again. But let me go back to the doctor for a little bit. It's like, I don't know, maybe it's because I didn't pay too much attention to his arc too much because again it wasn't that compelling. It was a little confusing. So
you mean the priest?
Sorry, did I say the doctor? The priest. Sorry, I'm talking about the priest or the monk. No, was he a priest or a monk? Was it
junior priest?
Yeah,
who's essentially a monk. Whatever.
Him. I wasn't compelled by him too much, but so did he try to commit suicide? Maybe I didn't.
Yeah, that was like a big. That was a big thing in the beginning when he was meeting with the girl in that temple because he has like the like slit wrist scar kind of thing. That they show that about.
Why? And no, I remember that, but I guess I don't know because she said like it won't kill you. So was that really a suicide attempt, or I just got it as like, oh, he just occasionally cuts his wrists, and that was kind of it.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, I think it was supposed to be like he tried to kill himself, but then didn't. And I'm not really that and like his story. Also, the wiki page, my anime list page says he attempted to commit suicide in a drunken state during his university days. So, like, I think they were talking about the whole, like, definitely him being suicidal and not having a connection with the village and his role, which I think he was trying to reflect in, his new story that she wanted to hear. It was like the Cain and Abel story where it's like the older brother is incompetent and ruins everything. The younger brother is good at everything. And then the older brother kills the younger brother because it was the only way he could survive. And I think that's like his way of killing the part of himself, which is invested in society in order to be himself. I think that's what they were going for, but like, I still don't care.
Yeah, I don't know. Like it was, because then he said it was his despair that was like his other part of himself. His little brother was born out of his despair. So I guess society caused him despair, and that's what he needed to kind of kill off. I don't know.
Maybe that's one. I don't know. It was kind of convoluted for me, and not like.
And it wasn't the best. It was very easy to kind of just ignore and sort of move on. And that's what I did for most of it. And that's why I'm like so torn on Shiki, because the ending was just like so heavily like about him.
Yeah,
And
that's why it's tough.
it was unsatisfactory, I think, in that regard, kind of like what they did with him and like how he just didn't care for his arc. So it's like, man, I was love what the show was doing, but I don't know about this, you know?
I think it's a case where the buildup of everything progressively getting worse and them investigating is more interesting than the resolution, where they finally find things out and then they just go on a killing spree to get rid of all the Shiki.
Yeah.
But I will say a few things. I think it is the priest is kind of emblematic of the issues where because early on he said, well, like the Shiki are living things too. I don't want to kill either things. And that false dichotomy for me just doesn't really work because the existence of Shiki means the town folks get wiped out because it's not like everyone who they killed comes back. It's like, you know, you get like essentially a 33% chance kind of coming back or not.
Yeah.
So it's not an equal, you know, there's not a like both sides have a point kind of thing.
They can't coexist. It's just, it's not, no. He's just being complacent, pretty much not choosing. And
that's why I said because she likes his books and now he doesn't want to kill them.
And it wasn't even like, yeah, that's definitely part of it. And it wasn't even like the investigating was cool, but it was really slow. But I feel like when it really kind of brought it all together and it was awesome was when it led to like the village just kind of going crazy and going Shiki hunting and whatever, because it was really good. Like the way they kind of portrayed the different perspectives in 20.5 and 21.5 and it just, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to.
It just really added on to it. And like, I didn't feel bad for the Shiki, but it was great how they could just show like, okay, these are the Shiki who were like predators for most of the show and everyone in the village was their fucking victims. And now so easily on a dime, the predator becomes the prey.
Yeah, that's what was so cool to see because the whole time you're getting like this mounting sense of fear and doom that like the Shiki are just going to annihilate the village. But like, when you think about it, and one of the big things of the show is that they always showed the date, and I think that's supposed to be, like, very purposeful, that, like, it took the Shiki, like, 3 months to get to where they are. It took them, like, 3 days to get wiped out. Yeah. Like, 3 days to essentially have all their numbers down. But I think, as you said, 20.5 and 21.5 added some much-needed, like, individual characterization for some of the cast members, so we could really get that point of view from their, like, the everyday person point of view. And so the second time I felt bad for the Shiki was only when they had the one dude.
Oh, no.
What?
Okay. No, I thought you were going to say Now, what's her name? Now, the chick from 20.5 who had the family. She killed all of them. Okay.
I didn't feel bad for her. I understand her point of view, but I don't feel bad for her. She was, like, interesting enough. I felt bad once they started having the humans go absolute batshit, and one dude was like, oh, I always hated that guy, let me at him. That's, like, when you start seeing the monstrous side of humanity.
That was
when
good.
When they only started killing them because, like, they had a vendetta against them, that's when I was like, okay, this is what we needed. We needed to show them killing them for the wrong reason, not just for survival.
Yeah, they used it as as part of like justification for their personal agenda. Like when they even started indiscriminately killing people that were quote unquote, oh no, they're infected. Let's just kill them anyway without a second thought, without a second chance. It was like, come on, you're just as like the Crusades, you know? It's not good.
They went full Lord of the Flies, no reason, no sense of humanity, no sense of survival. They just went like absolutely animalistic. So that was like very much needed to show that like, yeah, the humans are doing this to survive, but it's bringing out a lot of the monstrous instincts they have against fellow, well, not man anymore, but would-be fellow man.
Yeah, exactly. If they just needed a reason, and if it's reason enough, it's like, okay, I mean, it's good reason, like, hey, you killed my family,
But then it's the one dude who's like killing someone else just because he didn't like him. Like that dude had no. Yeah.
But I meant like in general, like for them to go after the Shiki, they just needed something to kind of get them out there, and now it's like, okay, but now they're adding like all these other reasons into it.
And I think those 2 episodes were very good and added much needed like groundedness for the like everyday actions of what's going on. The only thing, I think it's just later on, like the only issues I have is when I think it's all evident through the young girl, Shiki Tsukuno, the one who's besties with the priest because she likes his book.
Sunako, yeah.
The little girl.
Yeah.
You could tell that there are scenes of her just explicitly being like, I don't want to die. I wouldn't kill people if I didn't have to. Where, like, you can tell they want us to feel bad for her, but I don't feel bad for her because they're wiping out the town. Like, they're just wiping out humanity.
Yeah.
Like, they never showed any sign of restraint or resilience, which is weird because you know the, like, father figure for her who lived with them?
Yeah.
He's a human. So, first off, how is he so old and, like, still around? I don't know how that was explained. But he's a human who lives with you guys. Obviously, there's some form of coexistence that can happen, but they're choosing not to pursue it. So you're like, okay, so you guys are really just indoctrinating everyone who...
It's only like the humans that recognize them, you know, as Shiki. You know, that's because they started to go into that towards the end where it was like, they were trying to say like the Shiki were sort of like, oh, they were like rejected and all they've ever wanted is just acceptance. If only they could be seen as kind of for who they are, you know. And they kind of just likened like being a Shiki as being like kind of like in isolation. You know, you didn't choose. Yeah. And I was like, all right, okay, whatever. And then like they especially started leaning into that with Sunako by saying like, you know, she's been forsaken by God. And then when you finally get is it Tatsumi or Takumi? Tatsumi?
Tatsumi, yeah.
Oh, I was calling him Takumi for some reason. Yeah, so when you finally get Tatsumi's reason as to why he follows her, it's like, oh, because, you know, she's like a symbol for collapse and, you know, she just kind of keeps struggling in the face of everything collapsing around her. And you know what? That's beautiful. And then the, you know, priest, rightly so, is like, that's it? Yeah.
Yeah. His best moment, like, really? Like okay.
It's like, really, he was just like, so you're a simp too? Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
and that was it. And by the way, that went full circle by the end.
That did go full circle.
It went full circle.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I get what they're trying to go for. I respect it, but it doesn't really work when you look at the facts.
Yeah. Like, I just thought it was a better illustration of just kind of like the potential for like humanity to like be monsters and to kind of be predators and kind of like, you know, and it's sort of like, it's not even presented as good or bad. It's like both sides. Kind of like where I look at it more instead of like it was trying to get us to feel bad for Shiki, it was more of saying like the Shiki were just saying like, we just do this. We just eat humans because it's what we got to do to survive. And that's just it. It's not good or bad. Yep. It's like, it's literally what we have to do. Same thing for the humans. We just got to kill them because that's what we need to do to survive. Yep. That's just what it is. It might look brutal. It might look evil, but it's what it is.
And I agree with that. I could just tell there were certain scenes with the young girl, especially at the end when she's like running through the woods in the fire. And then like the old guy is like chasing her down, being like to like try and get her, that like the way they were framing it in like such a dramatic way of like focusing on her and like her pleading, like I could tell they wanted it to be like kind of like us being sympathetic. And I wasn't feeling sympathetic. I'm cheering the old dude on. I'm like, gotta do it, bro. Like, get him. Like,
are you talking about Megumi or which girl?
No, we can get to her in a second. No, still the lolly.
Yeah.
When she's like chasing him and then like the priest ends up killing him to save her. Like, I was just like still, I mean, like, I was like, I think you guys are trying to get me to not root for the humans, but I'm still here rooting for the humans. Like, I'm still rooting for the village.
Yeah, no, I think it was trying to get you to feel bad for her. I don't know. There's no other way it could have gone, honestly. You know, like with him, like with her kind of like gonna end up dying. And so if the intention was to feel bad for her, I did not. So
yeah.
You know, I just saw more of the intention of it as just being like, this is the inevitable. Like, this is what was gonna happen, you know,
that's
kind
true.
of like where, okay, this is what you wrought. Like, this is, you know, you killed all these people and now they're kind of coming after you and you're scared, but this is just the cycle, you know, this is just what it is. Actually, speaking of him, what did you think of the old man? Like that guy, the old bulky man.
That badass dude?
Yeah.
I think it was cool. I was like, go, dude, go. When he was like, my son is going around killing people, like, that's the son that he's like, that's my sin to take care of. I'm like, this is pretty badass. Go, guy, go.
I thought they were like, maybe like trying to frame like what he was doing. Cause he was one of the ones that used like, you know, the justification of their Shiki for like brutality and the violence and whatever. But like, I don't know, every moment with him, I was just like, you go. Like from early on.
Yeah, I was
like, they were trying to find the girl and his son was just like apathetic. Oh, she'll be fine. And he's like, what the fuck? And he just punches him. He's like, we got to go find that girl now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a very big like man of action and like I respect it. Like that's the thing is I think when the priest, not the priest, we keep mixing them up. When the doctor said, I made a decision, I'm like, I gotta respect it because no one's making decisions. So I'm like, go all in, make the decisions.
Because at the end of the day, it's about the community. You know, they're putting the community first. So, you know, they might have their own like agenda / reasons, but the end result is they're doing something while Junior Priest is sitting on his ass, you know, kind of like what's her face?
What do we do?
What's her face? What was the what was the girl's name? The one with the little brother?
Hairs?
The one with the little brother. Yeah, like when she
I forget
comes
her name.
like running to him and like, can you give me a name, like a posthumous name?
Yeah.
And then he's just like, okay. You know, like he's just like so unaffected by her and what's going on with her. And he's just like,
how do you not feel for her? She's lost both her parents. You know, even if you're like the priest and you suck ass, like whatever, like, how do you not feel for her? She's lost both her parents. She thought she lost her brother. She hasn't slept. She's feeling tormented. And you're just like, I don't know. Let's roll the dice and see what name you get. And he didn't do that exactly. But like, he just doesn't give a shit. Yeah. Like, he just doesn't care.
He just didn't care. He didn't do anything. I'm like, you're a priest. Like,
he's like, nah, I'm Cain and Abel. I just can't pick for today. Like, he just can't decide.
I don't think they did a good job of showing like why he was so tormented by his family and like in his situation.
They definitely needed to do more legroom to make his ambivalence make more sense. But
I think by the end of it though, just like overall the show and the characters, like I wasn't attached to many of them. And I think that was the point because I think like
in true horror fashion, they're kind of dumb and annoying.
Well, but I also think the village at the end of the day was the true MC.
Yeah. I think Ozaki would be like, no, I'm the village, but yeah, no, I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I think it was about saving the village and
because
trying to keep the village to go on.
Well, because it kept switching like so much perspectives and like screen time, like screen time throughout like most of the show, and it was like almost everyone was like a main character for like a certain amount of episodes or a certain bit at a time until like they died or kicked the bucket or something, and then or became a Shiki. You know, so because of that, like the only consistent one was the doctor, but even then it was like every now and again we checked in with him, you know?
Yeah.
So because of that, I'm like, okay, really, it's really about the village and sort of like collectively and like how like all these people in it are either failing it, not doing anything about it. Are they going to let it collapse? Are they going to come together? You know, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But the doctor is single-handedly the village.
He's the village. Probably, definitely him, like, the only character I like and respect. Runner-up to Natsuko, who's kind of insufferable, but he pulled his weight at the end, and I respect it, so.
Natsuko is...
the other MC who went out with the boss. Yeah.
Natsuno, yeah, him.
Natsuno, whoops.
Yeah, him, the doctor, the old man, who isn't really much of, like, he's just kind of there.
He's not a character, he's just there.
I respect him. Just those two and the old man.
Yeah, because it's so funny they show, like, Megumin as, like, this ongoing character, and I'm like, she never got, like, less annoying. Like, I'm never like, you know what? Damn, you're likable.
I liked her more as a Shiki, but I don't think
I did like her more as a Shiki.
Like, I don't know, I didn't, like how she was like, I didn't like her, but she just felt more interesting, you know, like, you know, that's kind of it.
Yeah, she was, like, a cool, like, horror, like, imagery, like her spooky being under the bed was spooky, and like, you know, she had some personality and sass, but like it's like at the end they catch her and I'm like, I guess you're just gonna die, and she's like, well, I always hated you guys, and it's like, okay,
yeah, well, like what was fun about
don't hate
her,
yourself on the way out.
Like what was fun about her as a Shiki, like her personality didn't get better, but it was more of like it was more of the dynamic she was able to have with certain characters that made it like more interesting, because you know she'd call out characters, she'd be sassy, you know, she'd like do wreak havoc, you know, and that was interesting. She was kind of like a little bit of a wild card. Now the only go ahead.
But it's so wild how she's like such a bitch. Like she killed her friend's dad. Like she's just like
serves you right. Serves you right, bitch. And it was like the funniest thing, because like meanwhile this girl's like thinking the whole time like, she's my friend. She's
been so nice to her.
Yeah, she's my friend. And meanwhile, the other girl's like, no. She's like not been your friend even when she was alive. She just kind of hates you.
Was always a bitch.
Like she was at the bus stop and she's like, here comes this bitch. You know? Yeah, no. But the only one that I think was like completely pointless, and let me know if you saw more of a reason to him. Maybe there was. I think it was supposed to really add to I guess the brutality of it at the end. But like, was Masao the guy, the friend of Natsuno, the guy that hated Natsuno, who was like the whiny
that
kid?
Dude,
him becoming a Shiki, what was the point? He didn't do anything.
I'm grasping at straws here, but I think he was one of the few Shiki who didn't actually kill people.
Yeah.
I think they mentioned that, and I'm not really sure what they were trying to go for with that. Maybe it was like, I don't really know, but
I feel
he
like
was in an...
When you say that, I guess, and I'm sorry to cut you off, I feel like...
No, you're good.
Maybe the show was just trying to cover all its bases, saying like, all right, here are Shiki that don't kill, and this is what happens. Here are Shiki that do kill, and this is how that goes. And here are Shiki that are like in between, you know, and aren't part of the collective, like the chick's mom, who was kind of like in her house and would cry every time like her daughter would feed her blood. 21.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's all stuff that I think should have had more exploration in general, but I think they were trying to show that, like, he was always, like, an outcast in his society. Everyone hated him. He hated people. Like, even someone like that was able to hold on to some shred of humanity where he wouldn't kill people because he couldn't bring himself to.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were supposed to have with him, but that message is really lost because he's so insufferable that no one really cares. Like, he sucks so much ass in a show with, like, so many people being insufferable, and it's kind of impressive because you're like, I mean, good on you, but you're still annoying as fuck, and I don't care.
Like, he is the worst. There was nothing remotely redeemable about him. You could argue everyone else was like, all right, they're this gray area, gray morality. They're somewhere between unlikable and redeemable. He had none. Just...
Yeah. I think he and Megumin are both kind of like, I don't care about you. You guys are both just, like, insufferable.
Yeah. I mean, like...
You know?
Yeah.
If you die, you die.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think the way she went out was fitting. I think it was good. I think how they they just rolled over her face.
What is it? Rolla rollada. That should be an edit.
It was just Dio. Yeah.
Despite all of that, I do think Shiki was a great experience. I've had a lot of fun watching it, and as you said originally, the soundtrack was really good. The soundtrack really fit it so well.
I do have to say though, so props to the soundtrack, really fit, especially like when the episodes would start and when they would end, they'd play that the OST track. I think you showed it to me beforehand, like before we watched the show. It's really fits the vibe. But also, like, even certain scenes where characters would suddenly, like, they were infected and they would, like, turn their head and it was, like, a creaking sound. And it was just sudden. It was like, oh, shit, you know.
Because that was them being, like, brainwashed and being like, no, I don't want to see a doctor.
But just the
like,
sound
really
combined with the sudden head tilt was just, like, you know, like, at first I got, like, taken aback a few times. So that was, like, creepy. But the only things that I would say did not fit, and let me know what you think, were the openings. The openings did not fit.
I like the first opening, but the second opening was kind of weird. But, like, the first opening was just so, like...
The first opening was a bop.
It was just a bop, so that might be it. But, like, it was very over-the-top and kind of, like...
Yeah, like, it fit, like, the over-the-topness of the characters. So I was cool with the first opening. But the second one was just, like, this is not fit to show.
Yeah, and I think they were both really well made. Like, they both had a lot of, like, they did the cool thing. I don't know how you felt about it, where it's like they'll stop on a scene and then they start the opening with, like, the overlay.
Yeah, that was
like,
cool.
The layer.
That was cool.
And I like that a lot. The second opening, I just don't like listening to it, but I think it was trying to capture that, like, we're punished by God feel. You know, that kind of, like, we're outcasts from God. Like,
got it.
Trying to get that holy vibe, but, like, since I never really felt those types of, like, vibes from the show, I think that also
it wasn't integrated well. They needed to integrate that better throughout, so you could really feel the Sunako plot line at the end, where her being forsaken by God, which was interesting concept, definitely interesting. But
it was an interesting concept.
Symbol of collapse thing was not presented at all throughout. You know, it was like, oh, now that you say that, that's cool, but you know, but yeah, no, I can get the holy vibe. It's just like. But if we were to make the argument, because I know in previous podcasts we've said, like, you got to watch, like, an opening because it really sets the mood, it, like, gets you ready to watch the show. That second opening does not. Because, like...
I skipped. That was a skip.
Yeah, because for a show that nails the tone and the atmosphere already by itself so well, if you watch that opening, I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't really go in there.
Not immersing me. I'm just gonna bounce.
Yeah, because Shiki starts and ends always, like, on a creepy, like sounds sort of note, and it's like, oh, okay. And it just stays with you, lingers. So I really enjoyed the experience. I just think I was soured a little bit by that ending, but I'm not even mad at the ending. I was just like empty. I was like, all right, whatever, and kind of like,
Yeah.
okay. So I was like, sort of in between, not like I was conflicted with like, all right, what do I give this? Like
What did you give it?
I'm still like, I was like conflicted right before this pod. I'm like, I need to figure this out. And it's like, I was like 7, but then I was like 8, but then I was like 7, and I was like, but 8. And I'm like, but the ending, I'm like, all right, so 7. I'm like, bro, just decide.
Yeah. I don't think I'm too bothered by the ending per se, because I think the ending of the village being destroyed and them not actually saving the village, but they saved the people, is like a good ending. And it was cool to have that conversation with the doctor and that guy who's like, the doctor's like, I guess I lost. And then the one old guy's like, well, it's not really a game. And I was like, yeah, fair enough, bro. That's actually a good point. So I wasn't bothered by the ending. I think I was just bothered by the priest and Sunako. It's their existence.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That,
yeah,
because
but I'm able to cope.
Like, I feel like they were trying to build like up to some resolution there, and then it didn't. And it's like, okay, like some answer, something that connected it all.
Oh, I don't know. I think it was gonna be like, I don't know if it was like an answer per se, but I think they did get the answer that the priest and her will continue to live on, whatever. Don't care about them. So I'm able to just push everything I don't care about onto them and focus on the doctor and the town, where I'm like, you know what? The town is gone, but you guys, you pulled through. Good on you. So I felt a bit more uplifted by that. I mean, not like uplifted. It's not like happy, but I was like, yeah, I'm chill with this. So I gave it an 8. So I was definitely content, but I think it's just tough when they were trying to make the Shiki like separate but equal, to pull a very cliche way of saying it. But I never felt like they were equal, because their entire existence relied on being a parasite for the humans,
Yeah, no, I think they got what was coming to them.
And it's very difficult to kind of switch that, like, you spend half of the run building up to like, these guys are the enemy, and then shifting it to being like, they're kind of sympathetic. Like, I think to something like Gon versus Pito, we spend most of the Chimera Ants arc hating Pito, and the way they shifted it, made you start feeling sympathetic for Pito, but you're still aware that, like, their survival is reliant on killing humans. Yeah. So, like, it makes it a bit more interesting, but I think they just did that in, like, a better way.
Yeah,
but it's difficult to do.
Because by the end, the Chimera Ants were more sympathetic, because they were kind of, like, built up as, like, a separate species.
Yeah.
That kind of like, that wasn't like reliant on like eating humans. They just kind of just happened to exist, they're just kind of two, I don't know how to explain it, like two separate species that could be considered equal. Whereas, like you said, the Shiki are parasites, so it's not ever going to be equal. So it was harder to set up with that one.
And the Chimera Ants, I think they were reliant on like humans to survive, so they did show a huge threat to humanity, but they did a better job of showing them in a sympathetic light, in a way that you can say like, okay, well, I know they still got to kill these guys, but I feel bad for them, which they never did for the Shiki.
Yeah, and it also they were able to, and again, I have not again, but I haven't watched it in a long time, but like with the Chimera Ants, it felt like they now I lost my thought. With the Chimera Ants, it felt like they were able to show more of their humanity at times, where it was kind of like, wow, like they're having like more humane moments than the humans. The humans are now shifting. Like they were able to do this nice like role reversal, as you were alluding to with Pito. So
yeah. And we didn't really have that moment with the Shiki, which I would have been like really down to see. So I don't know. I mean, I think they did a mostly good job, but it's just a very difficult thing to accomplish, and I don't think it was executed the best. So,
yeah. But in terms of atmosphere, nailed it. In terms of the storytelling, nailed it. In terms of like a show that has like a concept that I could like, revisit, kind of think about, go back to. It's like, oh, okay. Like if I ever want to see kind of this kind of humans as like, what would happen if like a town like kind of lets itself just be devoured and they're all apathetic and kind of like, and then kind of like what happens then when they finally start to do something. I don't know. I feel like it's an interesting study. So
yeah, definitely worth the watch, and definitely a good Halloween pick. So
yeah, no, it was definitely good. Did you happen to watch the after credit scene at the last episode?
Yeah, I still don't. I guess they're just leaving.
I thought that just meant. I thought what that was supposed to be was a callback to the very first scene in the first episode where they were waiting at the bus stop. So it's just like the village continues on, but it's just burnt to a crisp, and they're just taking the bus.
I wasn't sure. I thought they were leaving.
I thought
they
that was
were all
meant to be
leaving.
like, this is just the remnants of the village and we're still living here.
Oh, maybe.
And
I
we're
don't
kind of
know.
going to go on. I don't know.
That's a good question.
Because, like, I just feel like, because didn't they all leave at the end, like, with the doctor when they were all leaving then? So why would they still be there after that, you know? Like, in the daytime at a bus stop, like, and just focusing.
Well, I thought they were all leaving because everything got burnt down, because they were showing everything was destroyed, and they kind of all acknowledged, like, we can't come back here. Like, everything's gone. So, according to Wikipedia, they're all leaving the fire-ravaged mountainside. Okay. So
makes sense to me. All right, cool.
Yes, yeah, they out.
I mean, I saw the dad walk into the bus. I'm like, I don't give a shit about him. I saw the other girl.
Speaking of him, what a dumbass dude. Like, talk about like one of the dumbest people. Like, you got that dude in your corner. Not long for this world.
This show had dumb characters, and he was just
in true horror fashion. Dumb. Apparently,
like, let me just take down the crosses. Let me just take down anything to protect my son against the supernatural.
Even if you don't believe in the supernatural, which he's like super anti like anything supernatural, why would you move to a small town where they're going to be more supernatural inclined than like a city?
I don't know. And that's actually another reason why I do think like it was really about the village as like the MC or whatever, because again, they had a lot of these scenes, these small moments with the characters reflecting on why they moved to the village, something peaceful about the village, and then contrasting that peaceful life and like the people here are so nice and accepting to then the brutality and the violence and then, you know, killing one of the Shiki because you kind of actually secretly hated him. It's like, yeah, now I can kill you, bitch.
Yeah. So, bye, bitch. Yeah. So that was cool to see. That was a good scene.
Yeah. It was wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good fun times with Shiki.
Yeah. I think Shiki definitely didn't scare me, but totally fits the spookiness. And that's kind of it for horror ones that we watched. We wanted to also watch Mononoke, but I didn't get to watch it. Sha, I think you checked out like 3 episodes, like a whole like first arc. How is it so far?
The first 2 episodes were one arc, and I started the second arc, and it's a very interesting experience, but I can already tell because it has such a really cool, unique art style, and it's presented in such a like cool, almost like it's kind of like that old. What's the name of the old type of paper that they would write on, like parchment paper? Oh, you know, like back in like historic times.
In parchment?
Parchment, yeah. So it's kind of like almost has that parchment texture, and it's like the most colorful series you've seen. I'll have to send you some screenshots. I've seen 2 episodes. I might have taken 20 screenshots. I was just like freaking out. So it's very colorful and has that unique art style, not kind of like goofy. It just feels very historic and colorful. Yeah. But it kind of feels more along the lines of that like psychological thriller like we were talking about. And I think that's what it's going to be more along the lines of, where it might have a few like creepy elements and it might be conceptually creepy, but it's not going to be like scary. But I think it's great so far. I mean, the first arc was really well presented, really cool, really well done. It's going to be definitely one of the most unique experiences and one of the most interesting looking series. So definitely, it might not be the best spooky experience, but it'll be a good experience nevertheless. So I have high hopes.
I'm hyped to check it out eventually. I couldn't watch it in time for this pod, but
because you were doing double anime homework, because there was one more series that you watched that was not really scary, but you did finish. Yeah. So we can mention that if you want.
So this one has been on my plan to watch list, actually on my plan to watch list for like years now. And I always just meant to get around to it, and I just never did. And then I was like, finally, I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is spooky. Let me check it out. Was totally not, it wasn't. Yeah. I don't know. You could argue it has elements, but not really. But I'm just finally glad I got to watch all of it in its entirety. And that is Paranoia Agent. Got to finish like the last 2 episodes about a couple of hours ago, and it was really good. Again, I don't know, like it shares some of those elements of like Perfect Blue with like not like dreams versus reality, kind of like mind bending, like not knowing what's going on, what's real, what's not. And so like that can lend itself to sort of being sort of not full out like outright scary, but like creepy or just kind of like potential for creepiness, but not as much as it didn't have as many implications as like Perfect Blue, because like this one was more like kind of vignettes, like sort of like different characters in each episode kind of dealing with like a different thing in their life, but it was all sort of interrelated to the main overarching thing, which was based on the title, which is Paranoid Agent, but really it's the little slugger or the Shonen Bat, character that's kind of like whacking everyone with his bat, while rollerblading, which again, scary to the characters, but not like as a viewer, you're just like, okay,
It got me though in I think it was like episode 10 or something. It was the one with the guy working at the animation studio and he's like driving away and he just sees in the rear view reflection and catching up. I was like, that one's kind of creepy. That one got me when he's like catching up to him. I'm like, no, go back.
Yeah. That one was really well done. That episode, kind of like how everything was framed and sort of, that one was actually the most reminiscent of the stuff that the director had done in like Perfect Blue. Like it reminded me a lot about like that in terms of the scenes and the shots and like the vibe. But
yeah, I like Paranoid Agent because it's kind of like a culmination of every style and tone that's found in every Satoshi Kon movie. Cause like, Perfect Blue, you can see the obvious references. You can see some Paprika going on a lot with the like different types of worlds that they're bending between. Yeah. And then you even get some Millennium Actress with the transition scenes in some of the earlier episodes. And you get that Tokyo Godfather humor in episode 8, which is the notorious suicide episode. That one's kind of infamous in like various ways where like some people either think it's like the worst episode or for some people it's like their favorite. So it's a very polarizing one.
As usual, this is one of those cases where I'm like completely blind and unbiased. Like I don't know like as much, like I had it on my watch list and also never read any of the discourse because, avoiding spoilers and just never read about it. So I don't know anything about the reception to any of the episodes. Yeah. So first time I'm hearing about that, but I'm not surprised because I was really invested in the first 7 episodes. Like I was like really interested. At some point I was like, kind of trying to finish Shiki because I really wanted to just go watch Paranoid Agent because I had already started it and I was just like so interested. And then I really like lost steam and got unmotivated after like during episode 8. And then I was like, all right, power through, watch episode 9. And actually I will argue episode 9 is worse.
I forget
8.
What happens in that one.
Episode 9 is just
I know that one.
3 like housewives just gossiping about the rumors about little about Shonen Bat, and that was kind of it. That was the whole episode. And I got the purpose. I got the intent, which was to show how this character is kind of growing in the community in terms of like the stories and the myths and all that. So, but it was not great.
Did you have any kind of takeaways for like Shonen Bat and the connection between that and the essentially like Hello Kitty icon too?
What do you mean? Like in terms of like the ending or just in terms of like the kind of the real world application or sorry, not application.
I guess either, because I have like a cool take that I read from someone on I read this essay on like the real life implication of everything, but
well, before I get into that, I'm curious to know, what did you think about episode 8? Because I want to just my episode 8 take on it.
So my episode 8, I didn't actually have any issues with episode 8. The first time I was watching it, I had major issues with like episode 5, which was the episode with him just kind of like detailing everything.
Oh, I could see that, but I was still interested because I was like, I kind of want to see where this goes. So, but I could see why that would be like, this kind of ruined it,
Yeah, I was like so invested in like how intense everything was, and I was like, this is so perfect. Like it's like Perfect Blue every episode, and then they like pumped the brakes, and I was like, I was telling my friend at the time, I'm like, this is one of the worst episodes I've ever seen. I hate this so much. Yeah. Why is it like this? Go back and do the thing. But I appreciate it more in retrospect because they shift up that tone so often in the later episodes that like I already kind of had that moment of like, go back. It's so early. So then like 6, 8, and 9 onwards was like whatever.
An appreciation for so many episodes now that I've finished, like so much appreciation except episode 9. But besides that, everything else, cool. And I didn't have like that much of an issue with 8. It just slowed me down because again, I was like, it just was kind of like a side story in a way.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting because the main theories I hear are like arguments as to whether they did or didn't succeed in killing themselves.
Oh, they did.
That's
that.
Yeah, they did.
I definitely think they did. I pieced that together, and then I confirmed afterwards, like, okay, well, from someone else's take, but
yeah.
I started thinking that like maybe it was like a little like it did take me a while. I was a little late on figuring it out, but it was sort of like when the old man kind of had the disoriented scene where he was like in the parking lot and he noticed like something's going on. I didn't get what he was noticing, but I had felt like something was off before then. And then once they were like trying to ask Little Slugger, or Shonen Bat Little Slugger to kind of like kill them, and he just was like like taken aback and running away. I'm like, okay, that's an odd reaction. And then by the end, when like they appear in the photos, and then the girl's like reaction to what's in the photo felt a little too extreme to like just people in the background photobombing. I'm like, oh, they're dead. So so that's why I thought that. It was pretty late.
So that was interesting. No, that was interesting.
And then I'm like, where could they have died? I'm like, oh, they probably died during the construction, earlier on. When they, that's what actually happened. Because it was weird that they would have survived that.
Yeah. I forget the details because I just remember them trying to hang themselves. And I think that was like a scene that got like majorly censored on TV. Like was like controversial.
That makes
and
a lot of sense. Back then on when it was airing originally in Japan.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like they would try and censor that these days.
I mean, it is really like, like when I first watched, like, oh, okay. And I was like, all right. But and I was like, thankfully it didn't go down that way because they died earlier. But I was definitely thinking it was like during so they when they first met up in that first house or building to kind of kill themselves with like all these pills they were trying to like eat or they were also doing carbon monoxide, and the little girl pops in, and then suddenly when they're gonna, kind of continue with it, then like a crane just busts through the wall and like the house is just being demolished. The building's being demolished. And then they just sort of fall out, and then they're like, damn, we have to kind of try something else. But I think they actually just died there. So
yeah, that would make sense actually.
Because they ate so many pills, like they were chowing down on them to like not have died from it. It was just like, and from everything else, it's like, okay. Yeah,
that would be wild.
Yeah.
That would be wild to think. So that's an interesting one. I mean, it's an interesting one. I don't know if it's like a favorite or least favorite because I love the first 4 episodes so much. And I do love like generally all the episodes now, like in retrospect, everything they represent and the overall message I got was so much more impactful that like I appreciate everything now in retrospect.
Yeah, no, I definitely do too. I actually want to tempted to go back and rewatch just now with the new lens of that I can appreciate like things going on more. Before I was just like, I wanted to just get back to the first 4 episodes and just being like, okay, when are we, picking back up? Like, where is this going? Kind of like the plot or the overarching thread. And now it's like, okay, now I can appreciate things. I definitely enjoyed the connection, like how it went from the Ichi, like the grade school kid, and then like the next person is like his tutor, and then her life, and it was really interesting. But I always found it weird that like the only one that doesn't directly connect is the first girl, and I loved how that came back at the end.
Yeah,
like I loved
the way they.
Yeah.
I guess we're not spoiling it, right?
I mean, did we technically already spoil it?
I don't know.
All right. Well, is episode 8 really a spoiler? It's not really a spoiler.
I don't think so.
All right, so let's not spoil. I think everyone should just check out Paranoia Agent. I'm just gonna say that like I was like, just waiting to see where it was gonna go. 10, 11, 10 was great, 11 was good, but I just really wanted to see how it was all gonna end. And dude, the ending, phenomenal, so good. How it brought everything back together and how like thematically it executed it. I'm so impressed.
Yeah. It's a wild story, and I think it's almost more fitting now too, with just like, I think like COVID and post-COVID, I think it's almost more fitting in a true Satoshi Kon fashion, like the idea which I take away is this like mass social anxiety of like the day-to-day life being too much that we need kind of like icons and scapegoats to kind of, give us some sense of relief or give us an excuse for like not performing or not identifying with our life to kind of give us a way out is really interesting.
Yeah, like for those of you that haven't watched, I know it was like really vague, but pretty much it deals with the theme of escapism versus reality to an extent, but kind of like within that lens of like kind of society and kind of like in the day-to-day, it's more grounded in terms of kind of like the small things we do in every day, like through a mascot character, through things that make us happy, that we think are just innocent or whatever, but that's just part of the escape. And I think it handles that really, really well in like kind of addressing it. So
I guess one of the things I can say that I read in a cool essay, because you might be wondering if you saw the wacky opening, which another awesome opening, when they show like the nuclear bomb and then like as that is like part of it. You remember that? I'm not sure if you saw it.
I think so.
I wasn't sure if you skipped the opening.
I skipped it most times, but I was really appreciating it a lot more towards the end. I mean, like, I think I watched it once in its entirety, and then I would just kind of like, it's kind of mostly the same thing. You see all the characters kind of, laughing in relief. Yeah. But there's a nuclear bomb scene.
So I think someone wrote an essay that I thought was a really cool take that the whole story is kind of an allegory for how, how like Japan was a huge, like, a major, what's the word? Like, they were, so many different war crimes. They were a huge aggressor. They've committed a lot of like war atrocities throughout their history. Mm-hmm. But then after the nuclear bomb hit, they were kind of just like forced into this sense of peace, this dormant sense of like, non-aggression. And now they've kind of thrived through having like, this cute, like being known for having like cute mascots and like this cute culture,
cool
which
Japan.
Is how, which has kind of covered up the sins of their past. So that was kind of the allegory that they were talking about, where like all these people have done terrible things or like have committed some kind of like burden that they can't really handle. So then like they have this, like something attacks them, and then they're just kind of living peacefully with this scapegoat that gave them a sense to like move on and get some kind of sympathy and, live normal, mundane lives.
Yeah, that's a really cool allegory, but I think it would have been like, it's too deep for me to have picked up on unless,
I don't think I would have picked up on that. So I I appreciate someone else saying that. So then I'm like,
I think you have to have like a really like cultural context to like pick up on that. And that's some of the things that are lost unless you like really like kind of read into it. Cause I don't know, was the show throughout, like within the show, was it like, besides that nuclear bomb in the opening, was it pointing to that in other instances? Like that
I have to double check. I'm not sure.
I don't know if I actively saw that within the show, aside from, hammering home the theme of like, this mascot and even the, little slugger himself represent this idea of kind of escape or hiding away or kind of having something to blame. And by the way, speaking of conveniences, having something to blame and all that, it was really interesting having watched Shiki at the same time as this, which also deals with society and a village in a way and, kind of hiding away from the truth sort of. Or not engaging in it. So that was kind of interesting going from that to the paranoia. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah.
It always comes back to living in a society.
We live in a society. But that ending was great. I'm going to say that again. It was great.
It seems dope. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you watched it. I'm glad you had a good time with it. I'm overdue for a rewatch, so.
Like definitely not spooky, I guess. I mean, I think you should still watch it. You could argue, it kind of fits the vibe. But I'm just glad I watched it. I needed to talk about it. So that's it. The only other Satoshi Kon work I have left, I think, is Paprika, and that's it.
Ooh.
Right?
You went kind of chrono?
Because what was it? Tokyo Godfathers I watched. That was actually the first one I watched.
Oh, nice.
So I didn't really go chronological. I went Tokyo Godfathers, then like finally last year I watched Perfect Blue, then this year Paranoia Agent. So all I have left is Paprika.
Did you see Millennium Actress?
No, I did not. So I have 2 movies left. There you go.
There you go.
I got to get on those. We'll have a podcast devoted to that with full spoilers.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. But that's kind of it in terms of horror anime I think that I've watched. I don't know if there's anything else like that.
I would be remiss to not give a shout out for my good friend Urban the Myth, who has a fantastic video on horror anime. It's a very good video, very well edited. I will recommend it. Maybe drop it in the description if we want. But he is the biggest Gakko Garashi fan, but unfortunately, I can't say anything about it because even admitting it as a slight horror anime is a huge spoiler, but I would recommend it to people. It's a great watch. One of the best first episodes in the game, in the league. And that's all I will say on it.
I actually never heard about that show. Don't know anything about it. I never heard about it until I think I saw him like tweeting about it once on Twitter. I was like, oh, I never heard about that show. I didn't even know there was a fandom for it. Like, just it was kind of new to me. So interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a good one. I feel like I'm already giving away too much by saying recommend it. Go in with your eyes closed. Don't read anything on it.
How long is it? Is it a whole like TV series?
I think it's 12.
Okay.
12 episodes.
One season?
Yeah.
All right. I'll have to check it out at some point. But yeah, no, it's super rare that I would get anything off my plan to watch list, especially shows that were like from 2004 and 2010. So, you know, I feel proud. I feel proud that we did this.
We did some work.
We did some work, and now we're gonna go back to not doing work for the rest of the podcast because you know, we gotta take a break.
Yeah, back to Snorlax mode.
Back to seasonals. You know, convenience.
Back to seasonals. The true horror all along. Seasonal watching.
Yeah, which I'm enjoying. I actually have to catch up. When I start watching like binging a show that's not a seasonal, like it kind of just takes over, and then I just ignore all the seasonals until I'm done. So the only other seasonal that fits this theme, which I have to catch up on, is we talked about it during our Impressions podcast, is Miruko-chan, which is the kind of horror comedy anime. So I got that waiting for me if I want to watch that on Halloween. But
that'll be fun.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's like kind of like about everything we've got for this pod. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, this is a pre-recorded one, so let us know if how this felt. Was it better than the live stream? Are you mad that it's not a live stream? You know, do you miss it? You know, either way, give us a like, comment, or subscribe if you haven't already. Because besides that, what do we know? We're just Weebs.